Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
What would it take to get something like Roe v. Wade overturned?
It's a very tricky area to talk about. But, Roe versus Wade was a decision that built upon a case called Griswold versus Connecticut that established what's called the right to privacy. That case actually involved contraception, whether someone could be banned from buying contraception in a drugstore. And they said, no, somebody has the right to decide what contraception they use in their own
Texas case, right?
It was Connecticut, Griswold versus Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
So the Texas case you're thinking of is probably called Lawrence versus Texas that involved can you engage in consensual sexual activity in your own home? And can they have a law that forbids that for same-sex couples?
Well, I'm thinking of it's the lady that they called Jane Roe, I thought. It was in Texas. It was her third child. She was 19. You know who I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the Roe v. Wade case?
Maybe I am.
Yeah, maybe you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's not what you're talking about.
So, but the original case was just called Griswold versus Connecticut, and then Roe versus Wade was built out of that case and said, the right to privacy includes a woman's right to make a decision about whether or not to abort a child or not. So, what will it take to overturn it? Well, for the first instance, you have 5 judges that say it's no longer good law. We don't think it properly interpreted the Constitution, and we're throwing it out. Do I think that's likely? No. For a couple of reasons. Number one, it's been on the books for 50 plus years. It's really hard. I think it'd be hard for a judge to say, and there are a lot of conservative judges on the court that have not taken that extreme of a position of just overturning it all the way. So why now? If it's just because the votes are there, that doesn't seem to be a very good job of being a judge, right?
Right.
Which is why I don't think judges should ever give previews or hints about how they would rule in cases. Do we really want to appoint judges that tell us how they're going to rule? That seems like not impartial justice.
Yeah. And Amy Coney Barrett did a good job at that as well, right? Not.
I think she did a pretty good job.
Prey to.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about her life, to comment fully. I do know that she took a little bit more of a firm stance on things like abortion when she was a law professor than others have before they approached the bench. Sure. And so maybe there's a little more that you could preview for her. Sure. But definitely in her questioning, she wouldn't answer either way.
Yeah, that's what I was more going off of, yeah.
So I think that it'd be hard to do that. The only way to ensure Roe v. Wade is overturned is to amend the Constitution. I definitely don't think that's going to happen because you have to convince 3/4 of the states to vote for that. And there's definitely more than a quarter of the states in this country that are pretty blue and would not go for that. So then what you have to decide is, are the courts willing to take a position that says, even if 95% of the country was in favor of abortion, would we overturn it because it violates the Constitution? That's just backing up a little bit. That is one of the rules of the courts, right? In many ways, it's anti-majoritarian. If there are 55% of Americans that don't believe in the right to free speech, they can't pass a law that takes that away because the Constitution says you have the right to freedom of speech. Now, there are exceptions to that, right? Like you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't engage in activity that creates a clear and present danger to national security. Like there's some exemptions to that. But by and large, we have the freedom of speech in this country, right? You can't pass a law, for example, that says, I'm not going to let you publish your book because I don't like your political viewpoint. That would, you would get a court order so quickly, you wouldn't even be able to blink before you would get ripped to shreds for doing something like that. And the point is, what the Constitution has done is put some things outside of the realm of popular debate. Like, we're not going to debate whether people get free speech because they do. And if you want to change it, you better convince 3/4 of Americans and 2/3 of Congress to change that. And so that's why something like Roe v. Wade is such a big deal, because it elevates the issue of abortion outside of the realm of popular debate and places it in this constitutional status that kind of almost like exempts it from debate, right?
Yes.
And so many of and again, without sharing necessarily my viewpoint on it, like on the same-sex marriage issue, if you read Justice Scalia's opinions from the time, he dissented from those opinions pretty strenuously. And one thing he said was basically, look, same-sex couples are winning and passing laws across the country. what the court has done today is they've taken kind of that apparent victory and done it through a judicial decision. So they didn't win by convincing people to pass laws. They did it by convincing 5 judges that no one ever elected to do it for them, right? And there's different points of view on that, right? And so if you think it's a constitutional right, you're not going to want a legislature to decide whether you should have it or not, because the point is to keep it out of the hands of the legislature.
Yeah.
But, that was one of his points. But I think that, Roe v. Wade, the more likely scenario, without necessarily tipping towards my thoughts too much, is that I think you could see maybe a death by 1,000 cuts where they won't say we're overruling it, but if a state, say, passes a real restrictive law, they don't overturn it, right? They still maybe give lip service to Roe v. Wade, but they say, sure. So maybe what you have is a scenario where abortions are easier to access in blue states than in red states.
Yes.
So then will you have this kind of flight of people going from red states across from Indiana to Illinois to get an abortion, or from Alabama to Georgia, or from Virginia to Maryland, or from New York to, I don't know, whatever, New Hampshire.
Doesn't that already happen in some states?
Yeah.
All of states, maybe?
Yeah, and yes, and I also note that Roe versus Wade was amended by a case called Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which is actually the controlling law now.
I see.
So Roe v. Wade was the traditional kind of trimester view of how you...
Yes.
Because the issue that the court had to decide, and this is why I say it's complex, is because there are 2 human beings involved in a woman's maternal health care with a child. And so how does a judge, like a court, decide if there's a dispute, which trumps, like who wins?
Yeah.
Right. And so what the court said is, in the first trimester, we're going to let, the state can't infringe upon that right. In the second trimester, the state can kind of go either way or give doctors more leeway. In the third trimester, they can ban it totally if they want to.
Yes.
Planned Parenthood versus Casey replaced that with what's called the undue burden test, which means that because Roe v. Wade established the right to it, no state can create an undue burden to a woman seeking an abortion, right? So that's where you get into things like the admitting privileges and different things you've heard about, like, is an admitting privileges requirement for a doctor performing an abortion an undue burden on a woman seeking an abortion? Or what if you live in Texas and a law they passed closes every abortion clinic except in El Paso, and you live in Houston? Is it an undue burden for you to drive from Houston to El Paso to, obtain those medical services that the court in Roe v. Wade said is your constitutional right? So that's really the question they engage in most commonly now.
Yeah. And Tennessee amended a law this year, I believe, at some point. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, so I think it's a fetal heartbeat law.
Yeah, okay. I just remember seeing Governor Lee's Twitter about this a few months ago.
And it was pretty immediately struck down by a federal court as being an undue burden. Yeah.
So
And again, I haven't read all the case law on that either, but my understanding is that several people sued the day it was passed and pretty quickly obtained an injunction saying it's unconstitutional.
So that's a very good example. So you had the courts of Tennessee deciding that if there was a heartbeat, you can no longer abort this baby.
So we had the legislature passing a law saying that if there's a heartbeat, you can't abort the baby, and then a federal court inside the state of Tennessee stopping the enactment of that law.
Wow. What is the law now in Tennessee?
Good question. I don't know. I know that law was put on hold. As far as I know, there's a variety of other regulations around abortion providers that still are in effect. I don't know all the details of that, but that's
okay.
In my view, it was more of a political stance to pass that law than necessarily. I think most people would assume it was going to get struck down pretty quickly.
I see.
But the point is, like, you're taking a stand on this issue. This is what I believe. This is what's right.
Yep.
And then we'll fight it in the courts if we have to.
I see. Yeah. Interesting.
But I don't know. And again, I'm not going to comment on that because to the extent my office might have been involved, I'm not going to give any commentary on that.
By the way, we were supposed to give a little disclaimer at the beginning and we totally forgot.
Yeah. So, so I'm, I work as an attorney for the state, but I'm here as a private citizen talking about my own viewpoints and political ideas. I'm not giving legal advice or going to talk about any case or give any insight in any case that we're involved in. So just talking about what I read in the news and what I think as a private citizen.
Now, if and when the day comes that you're a political commentator, are you allowed then to commentate on personal opinions and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can still comment on personal opinions. I just
I'm
can't
pushing
relate.
for that.
It can't relate. Are you talking about when I've said I'm not going to tip my hat to my personal opinions?
No, I've said when you're if and when you're a political commentator, can you then say
Sure.
whatever you want?
Yeah, why not?
Anything else you wanted to talk about today?
I don't think so. I think that we, I guess I'll end with this, just something I've been thinking about. We are very divided as a country. And no matter the result today or in whenever, however long it takes to count everything up, we got a lot of work to do. And my prayer is that we can have mercy towards people that don't agree with us. And when people maybe make what we think is the wrong decision, we're quick to forgive.
Yeah.
And kind of welcome with open arms people that were our fiercest political opponents. I think we can only do that if the Lord helps us.
Yeah.
But I think if we do, we really could turn a corner.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are sitting at home every day that have just been eaten up and spit back out by the political system and their Twitter scrolling and Facebook scrolling that are desperate for something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the church has failed in a lot of respects, but has a real opportunity here to kind of show the love of Jesus to these people. So that's my hope and prayer.
Yeah, and it is, as you're an elder at Emmanuel, where Andrew and I both go, and that is a tricky thing to navigate because the role of an elder pastor, we were just talking about this yesterday with Matthew Hawkins on here, is one of his points, which I thought was a great point, is that if you are taking a certain position politically and advocating for a certain candidate, if that candidate loses, you lose some influence, for the next 4 years, presumably, and so forth. And his idea is, as opposed to endorsing a candidate, it's better to focus on changing policy. Like that's where the real work can be done. And you're doing that through relationships and building long-term relationships and building influence through policy. So he's an advocate of that and not necessarily just taking a stance or having a public endorsement of candidates. So I guess the way to safeguard when you have spiritual leadership at a church is just keep teaching the Bible and the principles in Scripture, pointing people towards Christ, the love of Christ, drawing people's hearts into that. And then on the secondary issues of how they're going to vote politically, you're leaving that up to them. Is that how you would see it? And I know there's people that disagree with that because they say, well, how can you ever vote a certain way if they're going to be
proponents of Roe v. Wade.
Proponents of Roe v. Wade, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and we didn't really get into this. I mean, my personal opinion is actually, this is not what the Bible says. This is Travis Brown's view. I don't think the president doesn't pass any laws about abortion. He may appoint judges, but we hope they're going to be independent and not just do whatever the president tells them, otherwise they'd be terrible judges.
Yep.
So I actually think that who we vote for president really doesn't have a huge bearing on the issue of abortion. Maybe there's issues of funding NGOs or other things or treaties and things like that, but it really, I think, is de minimis. The real action on abortion restrictions is at the state level. So I really think people should read up, if they're really passionate about the issue, more on who their state representative is, who their governor is. I think that's really where it really matters. Not that it's not an important issue.
Yeah.
I also think that the abortion issue is, if we come at it from a perspective of it is this way or it's not this way, then I think we're missing a lot. For example, if Roe versus Wade was overturned today, do we really think that abortions will go away in America? They will not. They will not. Not that that's not a reason to overturn it, and I'm not saying either way, but there has to be a way to deal with the issue of, okay, if abortion's illegal and it's a crime to get an abortion, you will go to jail in an effort to discourage people from getting abortions. And let's say we have a lot more kids now. Are we prepared to deal with that? Is the church prepared to deal with that? Is the government prepared to deal with that? Are we willing to give all those kids health care? Right? It's just a question.
Sure.
And so, and I think that the vast majority, again, I don't know enough stats on abortion to comment fully on this, but I don't know very many people on the far left or on the left at all, and I would consider myself probably a center of left person politically, that would say, I believe anyone can get an abortion anytime they want to for any reason. I really don't know of many people. I mean, yes, maybe some of the farthest, most extreme pro-choice advocates may say that.
Okay.
But number one, that's not the law. You can't just get an abortion anytime. You can't get a late-term abortion. You can't get an abortion in certain circumstances.
Yep.
There are certain requirements that are lawful that you have to comply with. You can't, it's not just a willy-nilly freewheeling out
Right.
there. And so what that means is that there's a lot of nuance in that. And I think that maybe outlawing abortion is where we're heading. Maybe it's not. But either way, we have to figure out how to help women that were raped and got pregnant, or help single moms that don't get paid leave to take care of their kids. And what are they supposed to do? Just not eat for 4 months, right? I'm saying what I'm saying is that there's complicated issues.
Yeah, certainly.
I'm not saying that I think abortion is right. I'm just saying it's complicated.
Yep.
And so, but to go back to your question, pretty much everything I've said today, I would say, has nothing to do with whether I'm going to be your friend,
Right.
or whether you are my brother or sister in Christ.
Yeah.
It's just totally secondary,
Right.
which is why I haven't given much thought to being a political commentator, because it's a secondary issue, and maybe that'll be my career one day. But I don't, if you, and I think I said this last time, I have more in common with a Chinese man that may be a socialist and that's a Christian than I have in common with someone that agrees with me politically that's not a Christian.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I just do.
Yep.
It's thicker than blood.
Yep.
And so we really are running into problems where we get those priorities mixed up.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Do you think that we're going to see a healing, a trending in a better direction, less divisiveness after the election's over, no matter who takes office at the level of president? Do you think people are kind of tired of this yelling from both sides and just this opposition to everyone? Do you think we're kind of tired of this, and no matter who is president, that's going to start to trickle away a little bit, or no?
Human beings, especially without the Lord, are selfish. I mean, even with the Lord, gosh, we're so selfish. We want our way. We want to control. We want power. So is it going to change because of an election? I don't think so. If it does, any good organization, company, whatever, requires tone to be set from the top. You can't, how can you expect the office clerk to be courteous if the managing partner isn't courteous?
Sure.
Why would you do that? You can't demand of people that report to you to do things you won't do yourself. If we're going to have any hope in the political arena of overcoming this bitterness and divisiveness that we have, the tone's going to have to come from the top. And so maybe from that perspective, I think that one candidate may have a tone encouraging civility and respect more than another. And I think that could matter. So to answer your question, no matter who gets elected, will it change? I think it may matter who gets elected. But I think part of it is that we're so polarized. We see anyone from the other party that gets elected as being a threat to my existence. And so why would I listen to that person anyway?
Right.
And I think that's a real problem. For example, you may not like LBJ very much, but it's hard to argue that the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act were two of the most important laws that this country has ever passed to ensure that if you're African American, you're not going to have to pay take a test to vote, right? Or you're not going to have to show up one day a year at 5 a.m. and wait in line while some magistrate decides whether you're good enough to vote.
Yep.
Right. Clearly, it was the right move. But on the other hand, even if you disagreed with George W. Bush, it's hard to not watch him throw the first pitch in Yankee Stadium after 9/11 and not think, this guy's got like 90% approval. He's helping us heal.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
And which is why he had 90% approval when he threw that pitch. People that hated him in the campaign and didn't like that the court threw the election to him, or that's how they would say it.
Yep.
They said, well, he's my president, and nobody gets to come to my country and try to mess with us.
Yep.
And so, yeah, he's got my back. And I think that the thing that saddens me is I think we've lost some of that. Notwithstanding my views of the current president, if something like that happened, he would absolutely have my full support. I mean, I pray for the man every day. I mean, he is walking into situations that none of us will ever understand and we'll never know about because it's all going to be classified for 500 years.
Sure.
And, they have to have our back.
Yeah.
And even if I disagree vehemently.
Yep.
And so I think that, I would love for us to rediscover some of the hope that comes in, throwing your support behind someone, even if you disagree with them, for the sake of unity.
Yep.
You've been talking about that at Emmanuel a lot, right? Unity above political or personal viewpoint.
Certainly.
And, right, we have at Emmanuel, you can choose to baptize your kids or dedicate them, and we don't make you pick one because we believe unity is more important.
Yep.
Now, if you say that there is no Trinity, we might have something to talk about.
Right.
But other than those core things, we're really pretty open. And I would love to see something like that emerge on the political side.
Yep.
Like, what can we all agree on? The dignity of human beings. Your skin color is not what determines your potential in life. It's the content of your character. If you're not going to have a disadvantaged position in the world just because you happen to be a mom with kids.
Yep.
Right. Or because of your zip code and the school that you got put into. We can all kind of get behind those things.
Yep.
And so if we did, then maybe, what the filibuster rule is in the Senate may matter a little less to us.
Right.
Or we can add it back because we're willing to compromise. There's so much more that unites us than divides us.
Yep. Totally agree. Travis Brown, everybody. Thanks for coming by. I appreciate it. Really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Fantastic. That was fun.